Welcome to Podcast Done For You, the show where we make it as easy as possible for you to make the right choices to advance your podcasting career. So let's get started on the show. Getting your show description correct and why it is so important. Lots of tips in this particular episode of the show. So take some notes or get ready to do the download thing in the show notes later on. But let's kick off with the most important reason why your show description, and I want to preface this is not the episode description, this is the show description. Why is that so critical to get that right? Well, it is the number one reason people decide as to whether to subscribe to your show. It goes above the titles, it goes above the frequency, it goes even above any kind of fame attached to the individual host. Why? Well, think of it particularly along the lines of what you commonly might look at a Netflix description, for example, and whether you're going to watch a movie, the back cover of a book, or maybe the shop window, or your elevator pitch. These are the crucial few seconds that we all make decisions on. It is that first impression. What is it that your show is actually about? Now, remember, when we're going to go into some tips in just a minute, it's not about you. That's right. The show description, first and foremost, should not be about you. It's why people decide on it based on the content and the overall idea of the show. Here's the thing. You need a hook to start off with. You need something that is going to draw the listeners in. You need something that will draw them in that in a business sense is going to be about the problem that they're facing. There's no point having a show about something that is, well, you primarily, or is just about an idea that you think you like, but you don't know whether anyone else likes. Identify the problem. We've talked about it in previous episodes about really understanding your audience and how critical that is. When you understand your audience, you understand the problems that they face, and you understand the key questions that they're looking to have answered. Some sort of compelling statement about an outcome they're going to get. The most important thing is that people are thinking about themselves, right? Particularly, I'm talking about a business podcast. It may be different if you're a celebrity-based podcast, but that's not what we're here for. We're talking specifically about businesses. So make it about your audience. I've said it before and I'll say it again. You need to pretend that you are speaking to someone and that someone is nodding their head thinking you are speaking directly to them. That is the key in getting your podcast itself right. But it's also the key in the description. What is it that they want to hear about first, so that they will make the choice to pay some more attention to your show? So the second part alludes into that. Who is it for? You've got to name your audience directly so they can identify themselves. So here's the thing, that if you're doing a podcast that is for, let's say you're doing it for plumbers, well then say that firstly, what is the problem that they're facing, and then that it is for plumbers. You cannot simply just assume that it is for everybody. It is the biggest mistake so many businesses make in their communications. Be specific as to who you're targeting, because it doesn't mean that people that are outside of that won't come to you, but it means that the people who you really want as your clients are going to pay the most attention to you, and it's no different in a podcast. So make sure you give some kind of identification, I should say, to the audience. Then you want to be really specific about what value they're going to get out of the show. How transformative will it be? Or is it an entertainment-based business podcast? Whatever the kind of podcast is that you're going to have, you need to talk to the idea of the kinds of information that they will get out of listening to the show. What are the benefits to them? So we've talked about their problems, we've talked about them, and now we've talked about where they're going to get to by listening. Then you start getting into the important bits for you, that is, which is your credibility. At the end of the day, you can mention a problem and if you don't have the credibility to back it up as to how you're going to solve it, well, then why would they listen to you over someone else? But as I said before, don't make the mistake of making that the primary focus of your description. Because unless you are a super huge celebrity, which I'm guaranteeing if you're watching this podcast you are not, then who you are isn't the first and most important thing. In fact, if you look at some of the really great and well-known podcasts around, more often than not, they follow this pattern even though you might know the person because they have a degree of fame already. And I think that's worthwhile going and checking out some of the descriptions of other episodes. Now, what to expect is the next most important thing that people should outline in their description. What are you going to expect in the show? How does it work? What's the style? What's the frequency? What kind of format is it? Is it a interview style show? Is it a direct show like more often than not my show is, where it is talking directly to you? Is it one that is co-hosted, which is what I do for most of my clients, in fact, for all of my clients. We co-host the show, so they just show up as the expert. Is it a discussion in that kind of format? Will you have guests on the program? How often is the program going to come out? And what kind of style, as I said before, is really important. Is it a formal kind of style? Is it informal? Let them know what to expect because that will determine whether they listen, and it might determine as to when they listen as well, because a very formalized style might be something that they can listen to at work, for example, but a less formal might be more appropriate to listen while they're on the way to work or doing some exercise or whatever it might take their fancy. So then we come to the last part, which I think is really important to remember when you're putting your description together. You can have a very soft call to action. In other words, what to do next. Okay, so where they can get more information from you, include perhaps a website link. Don't make it too salesy. Remember, the whole value of the podcast is that it's not a sales technique, it's a get to know you technique. It's how they're going to get value from you. So if they read the description and feel like it's a sales pitch, well, you may as well throw the description away and you probably won't get them as a listener. So make sure that you do that. Now, here's some other tips that I want you to remember along the way because you can get carried away in terms of length and things. Now, really you want to be in that sort of 400 to 600 characters mark for the description that is the biggest part that people will see automatically. Remember, if you're, pick up your phone and have a look at your favorite platforms, and you'll see that when you look at a show description, there are not many characters that show initially. You're asking people to click on a read more. If you don't get them in those first few characters, you won't get them to read more. So it doesn't mean that you shouldn't use the full amount of space in the description, but just make sure that that first bit is punchy. It is about them. It is about the problem. Second part that you need to remember as well of all of this is the keywords. Okay, so have a look through and see if you can find some keywords that are going to resonate. There's lots of ways that you can research those in terms of SEO. I'm not an SEO expert, but I will say this, that when you go and have a look on Google and you search for some common subjects and things in the space that you're in, you'll see some of the words that come up. In fact, they'll suggest some keywords as well. So take a look at all of those. There are various tools that will help you find keywords as well. And the truth is you probably know them because you're an expert in your space. So you know what people are commonly searching for. Use those, use the terminology that they use in your description as well. There is no point using words or language that they wouldn't commonly use because it will gloss over them and it won't resonate when they're doing a search. So there is an opportunity to get some keywords into your description as well. What you want to do is make sure you avoid any kind of jargon and sort of vague promises that you can't really back up. Don't make it promotional and don't make it salesy, as I said as well. Make sure that you are also avoiding links as much as possible. Now, you can put a link in or to type out your web address, but a lot of the platforms actually don't put the hyperlinks in. So it's okay to put them in there, but don't do a whole lot of them. Use one and recognize that more than likely they're not going to click at that point because they don't all allow you to do that. So it's really important that you get your description right, that it's really, again, about them. It's about the listener. It's not about you. So another thing that I think you really need to keep in mind is the tone overall of the description. Don't make it so that it doesn't fit your brand. It needs to fit who you are as a brand and the way that you're going to present as well. If, again, the difference between something more formal and informal is kind of obvious, and your language needs to reflect that as well. So make it resonate with your audience. Make sure, of course, and we've talked before about the name of your podcast, make sure that resonates together as well. You can't have a name being particularly informal, for example, and the text and the description being very formal. They need to marry together. You need to get that right and make sure that it is being driven according to your brand and where you want to go and how you want to represent yourself. So it should be warm and conversational, because that is what you want to be doing ultimately, is having a conversation with your audience. So the description needs to reflect that. But it also needs to reflect, as I said before, the fact that you need to have some credibility in there. So you need to show the level of authority that you've got and make sure you're giving people a reason to listen, backing up when you've zeroed in on their problems, first of all, and what they're going to get out of listening to it. Remember as well, there are some variations in what you need to do on YouTube as well. So there are different lengths and some different ideas. The overall concept is the same. The order that we've spoken to today is also the same. There are just some variations potentially on some of the description lengths that you might have. The ability to also include a few tags in there of keywords, something that you can also do on YouTube. So check that out as well. Focus firstly on getting your description right for the majority of podcast platforms. YouTube is something we might address at a different time in more detail, but I advise you to really think about the description. And look, you know what? In preparing for this particular episode, what I actually did was completely change the description for my show. We made a few little tinkering things around the edges. Now, those of you familiar with the program from before, I was calling it Podcast Done For You, the show. We've actually ditched the from it. I played around whether I should have it at the beginning, and we're just calling it Podcast Done For You Show. That's simple and straight to the point. We've also made some changes in the description, so hopefully you like those. I'd welcome any feedback that you have on the description that we've put in there, because it is always a work in progress. There are always things that you might need to review and change, so slot that in your diary to have a look at it. The great thing about all the podcast platforms is you can change the description once you publish it very, very easily. So it's something that will take a few moments for it to propagate everywhere around the world on all the multiple platforms, but you do it very simply. So it is something you can play with. There may be reasons to do that. I'll give you a good example. I have a second podcast, which is called Biz Bites for Thought Leaders. Originally, it was just called Biz Bites until I found out that someone else had started a podcast called Biz Bites, spelt slightly differently. They spelt it with a Y instead of an I. But it was also another Anthony that was hosting it. Now, we appeared on each other's shows and had a bit of fun with that. But it led me to also making sure that show was a bit more specific, Biz Bites for Thought Leaders. But Podcast Done For You Show, check that out and have a look also at some of the others that your favorites might be. We often mention Diary of a CEO. We mention Mel Robbins. Shout out to things like the Small Business Big Marketing Show with Tim Reed as well. There's lots of good options that you can check out and have and see what they're doing in their description. Now, of course, I should say to you that if you don't really want to worry about all of this stuff and get it all done for you, that's what Podcast Done For You is here for. We'll take care of all of those things, so you don't have to worry. We will make sure that we get all of this right for you, and so that your podcast is about putting you on a pedestal as an expert, and everything else just happens for you. And of course, there are details on how to get in touch with me in the show notes below. I'm also going to put together a workbook, as I've been trying to do for all of my podcasts recently, that will showcase some of the information from this particular show and give you a little bit of a few dot points for you to follow and a few things to fill in so you can get your description right in this particular case for the podcast. So Thank you for tuning into this episode. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And remember, if you would like us to cover anything particularly, don't hesitate to get in touch. Until next time, make sure your podcast is on the road to being iconic. And if you need some help, you know where to contact me.